Reading is from 1 Peter chapter 1 verses 3 to 9. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, and into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil or fade. This inheritance is kept in heaven for you, who through faith are shielded by God's power until the coming of the salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time. In all this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory and honour when Jesus Christ is revealed. Though you have not seen him, you love him, and even though you do not see him now, you believe in him and are filled with inexpressible and glorious joy. For you are receiving the end result of your faith, the salvation of your souls.
Thank you, Olivia, for sharing your story. That was amazing. Thank you. It's not easy, actually, and it takes an astonishing degree of honesty. I'd like you to give us a question as we start to think through. One of the things that Olivia was very kind to share was that there was a point when she sort of came back to the church and things were a mess. And one of the things we're thinking about today in this Bible verse is the idea of new birth, a fresh start. So, I want you just to talk to the person next to you and say, if you were offered a fresh start, what would you want that to include? What if, in order to have a fresh start, what would you want? What would you want a fresh start to include? Just give me a couple of minutes just to talk amongst yourselves.
You go first.
I was hoping you were first. I don't know. Fresh start. I've already had a fresh start. I'm born again. Don't give me that.
Fresh start in any way, doesn't have to be religious.
Okay.
I feel like I'd have joined more clubs as a kid. I'd have done more football.
I thought you meant nightclubs.
No, I feel like I don't know the live stream.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I feel like I would have been more adventurous as a kid. I feel like that's what I'd want a fresh start in.
Yeah.
Non-Christian one.
Okay, interesting.
What about you?
I probably not trying to do a bit of more like
I think probably I wasted about 6 years of school. So I could have actually probably spent less than 12 years in tertiary education, full and part-time, if I'd have spent some of my schoolwork time actually doing some work. But actually that's quite wrapped up in my story though, because I wasn't interested in studying until I became a Christian. So maybe I should have had a Christian fresh start earlier, then I might have actually got the school attention better.
All right, let's see what other people say. If you were offered a full start, a fresh start, what would you want that fresh start to include? Anybody over here? A shower. Great, it's a hot day, isn't it? You think, you know, if you were going to go out, if you were going to meet
sometime in your life, you've had a shower?
if you were going to make a first impression, you'd quite like a shower before doing so, wouldn't you? Yeah, great. Something else.
I want a new house.
A new house.
Yeah, in Morecambe.
In Morecambe. Very specific.
Yes.
Good to know. Okay. All your neighbours in Virginia Water aren't feeling unloved at all. Just,
No.
okay, great.
told us all a long time. Yeah.
Other things.
I would have probably might have done some work at school instead of wasting 6 years and then spending 12 years in tertiary education trying to make up for lost time.
Yeah, I've just had a son who I've spent the last 6 months trying to make him do revision, trying to tell him to learn from the mistake that I made when I was 16, which you never do you?
Yeah.
Great. Something else. What do you want a fresh start to include? You want the same family? That's good. They're delighted. by
Good
that.
job you're there, Caroline. She wouldn't have said that otherwise.
Not so much rubbish. Yeah, there's that wonderful show, Sort Your Life Out, where they come in and they get everything out and they lay it all out in a warehouse, and everyone's just shocked at how many, whatever it is, toothbrushes or tea sets or whatever it is they've got, because we just gather this stuff, don't we? There's something, we're about to move house, and there's something about that, the idea of a fresh start, that really appeals. We can go in and we're only going to keep the things we're actually going to use, and we're going to find a place for everything, and I'm going to label it, and that's where it's going to be kept. And it's a really interesting thing, moving to a new place. Well, I've got a chance to make a fresh start with people, something new. There's a new place, a new chapter in our lives. What are we going to do? Well, we're reading today the words of Peter. I don't know how much you know about Peter, but he was definitely a guy who needed a fresh start. He was a fiery kind of character, and he was a fisherman, and Jesus called him, said, "Come follow me," and he left the boats and he started following Jesus. And he was the guy who was always the one sort of grabbing, saying, "Yeah, I'll do that, yeah, I'm up for this, come on." So when they're having this Passover supper, this dinner in an upper room, and Jesus says, tell you, you're going to betray me. He says, "Never, I will never betray you." And yet, when Jesus, even later that night, was arrested, he faces probably the most low-level challenge. He's sort of outside in the courtyard. Jesus has been arrested. He's going on trial. He's out there in the courtyard. And because of his accent, they know that he's come from Nazareth, like Jesus. So they kind of recognize his northern accent and say, "Oh, you must have been with that Jesus." And just a servant girl, not anyone of any power, not any authority or anything like that. He goes, "Oh, no, I never knew him." And in fact, he does it 3 times. 3 times he denies Jesus. And then he watches as Jesus is put to death on the cross. In fact, he's one of the first ones to find out that the tomb is empty. That there are women who go there first. They come back and tell him, then him and John run to have a look. And you imagine what's going through Peter's mind. I was so excited. I was passionate about Jesus. He was the only one that I wanted. I was absolutely up for him. I'd never deny him, and yet I completely screwed up. I completely messed up. On the worst day of Jesus' life, I betrayed him. And Peter was somebody who needed a fresh start. See, because the problem, I think, with a fresh start, and I say this as someone moving into a new house, getting a new job, joining a new community, is I might have a great idea. I don't know if you have this. You go to a new job, you're like, right, I'm going to be like the cool one, or I'm going to be the organised one, or the one who's never late for meetings, or the one who's always dressed like this. Soon enough, your real personality comes through, doesn't it? And it doesn't matter how much you move yourself into a new place, actually you've taken all your baggage with you. When Peter here, he says this, and bear in mind who it is who's writing this. He says, "Praise be to the God and Father, our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth into a living hope." New birth. Not just to kind of turn over the page, have a new chapter. Not just to say, "Hey, let's try out a new city." He says, he's given us a whole new life. The old life is gone. We've been completely transformed, and there's now something new. Remember, this is Peter, who when things got tough, when he got under any pressure, when things began to look like they might not go his way or Jesus' way, completely collapsed. This is a man who could not stand up under trial. And now he's writing to Christians who actually, we learn later in the letter, are facing astonishing trials. And he says, praise be to God, he's given us a fresh start. Not just any old fresh start, but a whole new birth. And a new birth into living hope. That's been our theme this week. That theme of hope, that this new birth, this fresh start into something that is in the future. That's what hope means. Hope is about the future. It's future focused. A faith might be kind of in what's happened in the past or what we've got now, but this is something that's future focus. He says, we've now been given new birth into a living hope. It's not a self-help strategy. It's not a bunch of instructions. It is completely new. It is something that is so different. It's divine intervention. It's a recreation of Peter and anyone who, like Peter, believes in Jesus. A recreation of their human hearts. It's not just a clean slate where all our old weaknesses are just going to come back in. No, this is the beginning of something new. Now, actually, like any birth, you have to learn and grow. I don't know if you've witnessed a birth or you've given birth. I know you were all born, but you probably don't remember that one. But no one sort of pops out of the womb and goes, oh, hello, I'm ready to take my GCSEs. No one turns up talking, no one turns up walking. I'm always amazed when you kind of watch animals being born, and then like seconds later the deer just gets up and gambles off. We are no good. We have to learn everything. We have to learn everything from scratch. You see, it's not that new birth means suddenly everything is just so completely different and we're all completely finished and sorted. No. We've got to, there's learning and growth that's needed, but this is a whole new us. It's a new me. It's a new Peter. And do you see that? It's living hope. See, what else would you want from a fresh start? Well, one thing is, I'd like not just to change my circumstance and things around me, I'd like to actually change myself. And I'd like to change myself into something that actually is optimistic. And I don't mean just looking on the bright side optimistic, but is actually going to go places. Because I know that whatever reputation I've had in the past, or whatever weeks I've had in the past in my previous houses, I know that within about half an hour, our new house is going to be chaos. And I'll be cross that no one's done the washing up. I know that at my new church, I'll get a reputation for being a bit scatterbrained and arriving slightly late with 41 ideas, 37 of which are absolutely stupid, and the other 4 are unworkable anyway. I know that's going to happen because that's kind of me. Well, this is New Start into something that is different. It's a living hope. And so what we're going to do for the next little while is think about what that hope is. So look down, the next verse. He's given us new birth into living hope through the resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ. If you've been at any of the things that I've been talking about the last week, you'll know that this is that our future hope, the living hope, the thing that is going on into the future, is based on something that happened in the past. It's based on the fact that Jesus died and rose again. That's why we can have confidence in the future. So how has he given us this new birth into it? It's through what Jesus has done. There is something solid, and he's giving it to us into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade. Now, I sadly lost a number of grandparents the last few years. One grandma was actually just down the road, living in Chobham, and she died during COVID, and then a few years later my other granddad died, and I knew they didn't have a lot, but there's a little bit of something that you're slightly wishing when the will's read that they actually have a chateau in the south of France that they've left to you as their favourite grandchild, and they just couldn't admit it while they were alive because everyone would have been annoyed. I've never really inherited all that much. But when Peter here wants to talk about what we've been given, what we've been given in the future, he reaches to this language of inheritance, because actually it's quite a powerful thing. It was the thing at the time in the Roman Empire, but it's the thing that we get now. It's something that you are promised one day, but you don't have yet. So, you imagine Prince William, every time he goes to Buckingham Palace, goes, one day it's going to be mine. When he walks around Windsor Great Park, one day it's going to be mine. There's an inheritance that's coming his way. Unfortunately, actually, due to the clever tax system, he's not going to lose too much of it to the tax man. So he's going to get to walk in that park and go, this is mine. But he can't do it now. He can't do it yet. He can visit and he can take a look and he can enjoy it. But there's a hope that's living, but he's only going to get it one day. You see, the Christian life, again, it's not a recipe of how to get there. It is a promised gift. That's the thing about an inheritance. You don't really earn an inheritance. I mean, not unless you're very good at sucking up to your grandma. You don't earn it. It is something that is given to you by virtue of who you are. In fact, it's given to you by virtue of who you were born. So how do we get this inheritance that is promised here? We get it because we've been given new birth into it. It's a birthright from new birth. And how do we get the new birth? We get it from what Jesus did at the resurrection. So one day an inheritance, right now living hope. We are in this living hope because of new birth. That's how we've got in there. And we're in this new birth because of the resurrection of Jesus. Now just think about that line. A gift one day, a living hope that we're living in, new birth that got us into it, and we got into it because of what Jesus did in the resurrection. Now, did you earn any of that? Did you contribute to any of those things? Did you contribute to the inheritance? Did you make the living hope? Did you rebirth yourself? Did you rise from the dead 2,000 years ago? Do you see how this is an astonishing thing? And it's all a gift. Now, we don't receive it all yet. We haven't got everything yet. It's really important that we don't over-promise or over-expect. God does not promise everything's going to be all right now. We're going to go on to that in just a minute. And it is that all of this is certain because it doesn't depend on you. But right, this is my illustration. I love this illustration. Unfortunately, I managed to find a rope. Should I grab this? This is me. I'm on this rope, okay? Up there, that's eternity, okay? And I need to imagine this sort of like a grappling iron hook anchor thing on that end. And that is firmly planted in the forever. It was done by the resurrection of Jesus. He died and he rose, and then this thing is just like locked up there. And one day, if you look here, it says, this inheritance is kept in heaven for you. So I know I'm on my way there. I'm on my way there, and this is like the anchor rope, the anchor chain that just kind of holds me. So I'm going there, and I'm absolutely locked in. And my job is just to hold on. It's all gift. It's all gift, but this is what faith is. It's just holding on. I can't earn what's there. It was given to me. I can't earn the new birth. The new birth is what's attached me to this rope. This living hope is like this rope. This is what I'm living in right now. And I'm living in it until I die. I'm living it until Jesus returns at the end of history and I get the inheritance that's been promised. And it's on offer to every single one of us because it's kept in heaven for you. Now, the great thing about this inheritance that's been kept in heaven, what does it say in verse... Someone else can talk for a minute. What does it say about this inheritance? Tell me about this inheritance that's kept in heaven.
Unperishable.
Unperishable. Yep.
It can never perish, spoil or fade.
Never perish, spoil or fade. Okay, perish. Well, so I think I might have mentioned to you before, I have a shelf of books at home that were given to me from various members of the family. And the problem is every time I kind of get them down off the bookcase, or every time we look at them, or every time they go to box to move, or if the sun ever shines on them, they slightly perish. They slightly wear out. And even though we're very careful, and the children weren't allowed them weren't allowed to even touch them until they got to a certain age, they kind of perish. They kind of wear out. Well, the great thing is everything in this life perishes and wears out. I'm now in my 40s, and the very interesting thing about your 40s is up to about the age of 40, any time that you go to the doctor, they want to make you better. They're always saying, right, what can we do? So I remember I had some little lump on my knee when I was about 32, and they sent me for, a scan and something, and they sent me for some surgery and just to try and get it rid of. I went back a year and a half ago. Okay, this time with the same issue. And they said, yeah, well, you're just going to have to be careful. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, it was only at this point, it was only like 10 years ago that you were saying, oh, let's fix it, let's get it right. And they go, well, you get to a certain age. And I was like, I'm only in the 40s, what are you on about? Or you go to the optician, and I came back from the optician so smug, so smug. My wife comes back, and every time she goes, they give her a stronger prescription for her reading glasses. And I came back with no prescription. I'm like, am I okay? But I know one day, the eyes will fade. Everything in this life fades. Everything in this life spoils. Everything perishes. It all kind of runs out. You know, the problem is that even if it doesn't run out just over time, if it doesn't just decay or die, actually, everything gets spoilt. Whether it's that, one of the movers drops those books, or the lovely antique table is left and somebody puts a nice cold glass on it and the condensation drips down, and forever there's that ring from your blasted teenage child who forgot to use a coaster. But everything gets spoiled. That's what happens, isn't it? Everything gets spoiled. And even the things that aren't actively spoiled or ruined or damaged or something, they just kind of fade away. That's when I realised that inflation was more than the interest on my savings. That was a depressing moment. I think it's changed back now. There was a particularly depressing moment, wasn't there, after the mini budget, when if you had any savings, they were actually losing value just by sitting there. Well, this is the thing about this inheritance. It's not in this world. It's not in this life. It's kept in heaven. So there is no decay and no death. There is no moral rot or no sin that can spoil it. There is no erosion. There is no end. It is undefiled. It is undiminishing. It is unending. It's a living hope, an inheritance that is solid, wonderfully unspoilable, unruinable. It's going to keep its value. Now, have you seen the movie The Incredibles? Yes. If you haven't, you should. Okay, it's a brilliant kind of superhero cartoon movie. It's the best of those kind of movies where there's lots of jokes for adults in there as well. Okay, just going to carefully. I know I shouldn't let go of hope, but I'm just going to temporarily. The baddie in the movie, spoiler, is called Syndrome. Okay, and Syndrome, he doesn't have an obvious kind of, he can't run super fast or is not super strong or he can't turn invisible, but he is a great inventor. And one of the things that he invents is 0-point energy, okay? And what he does is has these sort of gauntlets that go on, and what he can do is go zap, and this kind of ray comes out of the gauntlet, and it goes around the person, and then he can kind of lift them up and move them around, okay? So that's what he does. He gets these superheroes, and he uses 0-point energy, and he captures them all with his 0-point energy. Okay? And when they're in this 0-point energy, there is nothing they can do. Doesn't matter how strong they are or how fast they are, whether they can turn into flames or whatever. However bendy or whatever they are, they can't get out of it. They're under this 0-point energy. Okay? Keep that image. Let's read the next bit of the Bible passage. This inheritance is kept in heaven for you, who through faith are shielded by God's power. Now I want you to imagine this time, okay? 0-point energy is coming down from heaven where our inheritance is with God, and it's coming down this living hope, and it's enveloping us, okay? And it means that nothing can get to us. Nothing can stop it. It's like we're being shielded by this power. We've got this kind of invisible kind of covering around us. So that as we are going on in this living hope, as we kind of cling to the rope, as our inheritance is secure, even our holding on doesn't depend on us. Even the faith with which we cling to this hope is not dependent on us. It's dependent, in fact, on God's great power. He shields us by faith. He gives us faith in him through his mighty power. And it means that no matter what happens, no matter the sickness that we might face, no matter the opposition that might come against us, no matter our weakening faculties, nothing can shake us. Nothing can loosen us from this living faith. See, it would be very easy to think that of faith, and faith is something that we participate in, we believe, but you see, it would be very easy to think, okay, you've got this wonderful living hope, and you've got this kind of anchor up there, and I've got to cling on. I've got to hold on. But what if my grip stumbles? What about those doubts I've got? What are those questions about myself and my own moral strength? What about the besetting sin? That addiction or that habit or that heart attitude that comes back time and time again? What about that I'm not very good at theology and I'm pretty bad at good habits and reading my Bible and praying, and you know, there's some of the stuff that I think we talk about in church I'm not even sure I really understand, let alone believe. Or what about if one day my faculties fail and I get dementia and I can't remember my husband's name, let alone the Lord's Prayer? What happens if my grip loosens? What's going to happen to my living hope then? Well, here it says, God's got us. God's got us in his power. This is not dependent on our grip, but on his grip. Let me give you another illustration. One of my favourite places, where am I going to get you? One of my favourite places in the world is Beachy Head. They're down on the south coast, just near Eastbourne, and I've just been up there every time, and it was such a joy to finally take my family, where I've been going every year. We park at this place called Burling Gap, and you're going to walk up the way, and it was wonderful. It's this beautiful kind of green grass and this blue sky and this sort of greeny sea, and the sun was shining. It's absolutely wonderful. But I had toddlers. So what do? Well, there are signs all the way along that say, cliff edge, keep clear. Cliff edge, keep clear. Well, they were 3 and 1 or something like that the first time we took them. Well, what do? Go, don't forget the signs, guys. Stay this way. Do I trust them just not to go very near the edge? No, I said, come and hold my hand. And I tell you, as they put their hand in mine, they're going to grip my hand with their little hands, and it's so sweet, and you feel so protective. But as soon as a dog comes along, or a seagull, or they trip, the hand slips and they fall, or they run off after something, or maybe there's ice cream, or their brother says something, and suddenly their grip has disappeared. They're so easily distracted, and they're weak. They might fall over and they might let go. So what happens is they put their hand in mine, I wrap my hand around theirs. And their safety at the top of those beautiful South Downs doesn't depend on their little toddler grip. It depends on my grip on them. You see, when we're called to put our faith in God, when we're called to believe and trust in this, yes, we put our little grip in. But God, he wraps his hand around us and he holds on to us. That 0 point energy holds us connected. And why do we need that power? Why do we need to be shielded? Well, read on. It says, you're shielded by God's power until the coming of salvation that's ready to be revealed. It hasn't been all done yet. It's going to come up one day. In this you all greatly rejoice. Of course I do. I'm shielded by God's power. I've got living hope. I've got inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade. This is absolutely awesome. Of course I rejoice. But what about when life happens? In all this you greatly rejoice, though for a little while you may have had to suffer grief of all kinds of trials. He is talking to Christians spread around the Roman Empire when Christianity is illegal, where they can be arrested, they can be put on trial, where some of them were crucified, some of them were sent to lions. They knew that having this faith, trusting in this God, living in this hope, could cost them dearly. And he says, for a little while, you may have had to suffer grief of all kinds of trials. It's going to be tough. I don't know what the trial might be for you as you live in this hope. I don't know how your faith is going to be tested. It might be through a personal medical thing. It might be ongoing mental health battles. It might be something that happens in your family. It might be that you lose your job or there's financial difficulty. It could be that you are opposed and resented for your faith. It could be that your spouse doesn't support you in what you believe. I don't know what it's going to be, but I do know there'll be trials of all different kinds of trials. And you will suffer grief. And so we need to be gripped. We need to be held. We need to be shielded. And he says this, These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of even greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise and glory and honour when Jesus Christ is revealed. Why do we suffer? Why doesn't God just hoist the rope and pull us up? Why does he just pull us out of this world? Why is there no kind of zap, you're done? Well, because there's a journey to go on. There's a purification process that is underway. We see actually in the last verse, he says, you are receiving the end result of your faith, the salvation of your souls. Why are we in this life? Why are we not zapped and taken straight back up? Well, it's because God has got to make us ready for this inheritance. He's got to prepare us for it. So he's prepared it for us. Now he's preparing us for it. I was talking to somebody just recently, and they married into the family that owned a well-known car company. It was a family-owned car company, and he married into the family. And so his wife owned some of the shares, and the other shares were owned by his new brother-in-law. The owner of the company had died, and he left the shares to his two children. And the daughter wasn't particularly interested in cars. There was quite a sensible kind of business person and married somebody who liked businesses and loved cars and everything. But the brother, well, he just spent all the money. And the company was just slowly going down the pan because there were great radical ideas, and it was hugely kind of exciting. And he was very generous with things and all that sort of thing, but the company was going down the pan because he wasn't ready for his inheritance. He received this astonishing responsibility to lead a well-known car brand. He had astonishing wealth, actually, because it was quite a successful business. But he wasn't ready for it. And the world is full of people who aren't ready for their inheritance and make a mess. So what is God doing? He's preparing us. He's proving our faith. He's proving it as you do on a proving ground. Well, the proof of the pudding, the way that you know the pudding's any good, is by eating it. Or how is a rule proved? It's by the exception. It's tested by the exception. And he says, this has come to prove your faith, to test, to refine your faith. Because faith is more valuable than gold. Why? Well, because gold, at best, can buy you like a nice house and a nice car. But faith gets you to inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade. And he says he's doing this. But I wonder if there's a little word in there that I found very difficult the first time I read it. He says, in all this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you may have to suffer grief of all kinds of trials. Again, I don't know what you've gone through. I don't know what you will go through. But I tell you, when they're in the middle of a trial, it doesn't feel light and momentary. It doesn't feel like a little while. It feels like it goes on forever. You're stuck in it. It's so hard to see the way out. But that's the other thing that I find very helpful, is that if we have this life only to worry about, if the point of a human being is to live 70, 80, 90 years and then die, well, pain seems pretty pointless. We should do everything we can to minimize pain. In fact, that's how we live as a society, isn't it? We do everything we can to try and minimize pain. We try and make everything as easy as possible. And now we've just changed the law so that if people who really are in pain, they can end their lives early. Why? Because we believe this life is all that there is. But if you believe this, if you believe that there is an inheritance that we're being prepared for, then even suffering has a purpose. Even pain is useful. God is he's redeeming all the difficult stuff we go through because he's doing a work in us to prepare us so that we are ready. And so how do we get through it? Well, we get through it just by clinging on sometimes, by living in this faith, and we get through it because we're shielded by God's great power. And the astonishing thing is that time after time, and we've heard some stories this week actually, that even in the midst of terrible trials, there can be real joy. And we end by looking down at verses 8 and 9. He says, this may result in praise and glory and honour when Jesus Christ is revealed. Though you have not seen him, you love him. And even though you do not see him now, you believe in him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy. One of the reasons why Peter is so well known is because Jesus turned to him at one point and said, "Who do you say that I am?" And he said, "You are the Christ, the Son of God." He said, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for you have seen this. It's been given to you. But blessed are all those who will not see, but will believe by your testimony." And that's what he's writing here. He says, "I've seen Jesus, but you guys haven't. Even though you don't see him, you love him. And even though you don't see him now, you're filled with an inexpressible joy because you know that one day it's coming. One day it's coming." You know, I always dream on lottery day, or the day after a big lottery thing, that I'm going to be walking past the newsagent and I'll see a little slip of paper on the floor and I'll pick it up and then somebody would have dropped the winning ticket and there it will be me. Now imagine that is you and you pick it up and you go, "These numbers look familiar. I think I might check." And you go in, you go online or you find the newspaper or whatever, you check the lottery numbers and you find out that you've won the lottery. Now you haven't yet got the cash in your pocket, but you've got the ticket that gets you to it. How do you feel? You don't feel glum, do you? You don't feel bored. You don't just go about your day as ordinary. You are beaming. Like you might have decided, "I'm not going to tell anybody." Maybe you've made that decision. If you ever get a load of money, you're not going to tell anybody. But I tell you, people will be able to tell. They'll be saying, "There's something different about you. What's happened?" Well, the promise is that the thing that is on offer to us, the inheritance that's been given to us by the resurrection of Jesus Christ, through none of our own doing, is never going to perish, spoil, or fade. Even, I think it was 200 million euros was the latest, biggest lottery win. Even that money will run out. It will not satisfy. It'll even spoil us. But in Jesus, we have something better than a winning lottery ticket. And that's why you can say, even though you haven't seen him, you haven't got the money yet, you haven't seen him, you haven't been with him, you haven't received the inheritance, but you know it's coming. And so you are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy. Why? Even in the midst of suffering? Because what God is doing in us is he's giving us the end result of our salvation. Not just whisking us out of our current circumstances and giving us a fresh start in new ones, but transforming us. See, that's what I would want from a fresh start. Not just, "Charlie, here's some new circumstances where you can make the same mistakes again." No, what I want is I want to be a new me in new circumstances. I want to be able to be different. I don't want to slip into the same habits and mistakes as before. And that is what God is doing in us. As we live in this life, despite all sorts of difficult times, trials of many different kinds, we are shielded by faith. One day as he prepares us to receive that great inheritance that is waiting, never perishing, never spoiling, never fading, kept in heaven for us who are shielded by God's power. Let's pray together. Lord our God, thank you so much for all you've done. Thank you for the resurrection of Jesus that has given us new birth into this living hope, for that inheritance that will never perish, spoil, or fade. And Lord, we pray that you would continue to keep us by faith through your power, that you would prepare us so that we are ready to receive and enjoy and delight in the inheritance when one day we receive it. Thank you, Lord, for the salvation of our souls. Amen.